All right, y'all, welcome back to Combat Arms channel. Okay, so today is the 20th anniversary of the attacks on September 11th, 2001. So what I kind of want to do with this video is sort of explain my perspective as far as, what actually happened and what I remember of the day of the attacks, and also sort of talk about how it shaped me and how it sort of shaped my life and how it sort of got me to where I am today. Because again, it was pretty pivotal in me joining the military and actually choosing the jobs that I did. So we also have a video that I want to check out. This one is from the TSA, which is the Transportation Security Administration, which was created after these attacks. It's a pretty solid video. It's a few years old now, but it really resonates with me, just again, based off of what I actually saw on the day, or at least like the days following, and also what I've seen after the fact as far as actually going to the 9/11 Memorial Museum. Okay, so if you guys don't know, I was born in New York. More specifically, I was born in the Bronx. Now, I don't have a whole lot of memories of New York. I remember, a lot. I remember, where I lived, what sort of stuff I did, what sort of stuff I had in New York. But I moved out of New York when I was like 6 or actually 5. So I have a few memories, not a whole lot, but I did end up going to New York a couple times after I actually moved out. So I lived in New York, grew up in New York City, moved across the river into New Jersey. So we were about, I don't know, maybe like 20 to 30 minutes away from, where I grew up. So pretty close. It was literally, again, it was just a move across the river. So my biggest connection with the World Trade Center specifically is in New Jersey. My aunt actually lived with us. So it was my mom, my brothers, and myself, and my aunt also lived with us. So basically, she would just commute to the World Trade Center every day to go to work. I'm not exactly sure what she did at the World Trade Center, but I do have some pretty specific memories of her talking about it. And one time she actually came home and got like, this was such a 90s toy, but it was like those weird squishy things. I'll put up a picture here because you guys aren't going to know what I'm talking about. And you guys might not even have this outside the US, but it was this weird like squishy thing that you would squeeze. There was like water inside of it. It was just a weird gimmicky kind of toy, I guess. But she actually got one of those from the World Trade Center and gave it to me. And I thought that was really, really cool. Now, I think that actually happened after the attack. So I remember her telling me something about like, that was from the World Trade Center, so try not to mess it up or something. Yeah, it was a really cool memory. So she was kind of the biggest connection that we had to the World Trade Center specifically. Now, if we wanted to, we could be at the World Trade Center within like 20 minutes. That's how close we were. Now, on the day of the attack, again, I think the attack on the World Trade Center specifically happened around like 8 a.m. So again, she commuted, so she had to leave a little bit early. So I don't know, she maybe left around like 6:30, maybe even 7. She would leave there from the house, take like the train, I believe, and go over to New York. So what actually happened the day of, I just remember my mom bringing us, my brothers and me into her room to look at the TV, and she was crying, and we didn't really understand what was going on. And, we're watching, and we see one of the towers just smoking. And it's pretty bizarre. It's like, again, you see that sort of stuff and you kind of think it's like a movie or whatnot, because it's kind of hard to process a terrorist attack, especially when I was 6, I was like 7 years old. So yeah, around that age. So I was able to remember some very specific things, but again, I couldn't really understand exactly what was going on. So my mom was really upset. She brought us into the room and was showing us this, and we're sort of watching everything unfold. Now, of course, my mom is thinking that her sister didn't make it because, of course, she worked at the World Trade Center. She already left for work, and we haven't heard from her since. So that's kind of what was going through her head, and we were kind of able to understand that, but we didn't really understand death, because obviously when you're a kid, when you're that young, you don't really understand it or what it actually means for, a relative to be dead and whatnot. So it was kind of hard for us. I remember we kind of just tried to like, be all quiet. We weren't playing or anything. We weren't being loud. We were, dead silent. I remember going to the hallway at one point just because I kind of wanted to get away from it. Of course, the second plane ended up hitting the other tower, and, it was just sort of building off of all of that. So I remember going to the hallway, just being really quiet and thinking about everything. And again, I didn't really understand what was going on, but I was just trying to give my mom some space. But yeah, it was literally like worst case scenario. All this stuff compiling and Of course, my mom is expecting her sister to be dead from all of that. So it was very weird. And then of course the towers ended up collapsing, and that pretty much sealed the deal. My mom was not in a great state at that point. And yeah, again, it was just dead quiet in the house. Now, later on in the day, it was nighttime, I believe. All of a sudden, my aunt walks into the house. And she walks to the living room, and I'm like super confused. I'm like, were we just watching a movie or something? Like, what just happened? And it turns out she was actually running late that day, so she didn't actually make it to work before all of that happened. And of course, all the transportation got super backed up, so she didn't actually make it back to us until, later that day. So the entire day, my mom is just thinking that her sister died in these horrible attacks. And it was pretty bizarre to see her walk in. Of course, my mom was extremely relieved, and we ended up finding out that she was late going to work, and that kind of saved her. It did save her. So, yeah, I don't know. It was a very weird day, but I do remember some very specific stuff. As far as watching the TV, going to the hallway, the house being super quiet, my aunt coming in, and then us sort of talking about that. So, yeah, it was very bizarre. But of course, the aftermath, we see all the towers collapsed. We sort of learn more about how many people actually perished in the towers. So my aunt was sort of thinking about how lucky she was, and then my mom was also doing the same. And I remember, I don't know how long after, because I remember you could see the smoke I mean, you could see it from space, I think, but you could see the smoke for miles and miles and miles. And again, we were just across the river. So I remember we went somewhere, like on a mountain or something, like up to a trail, and we were able to see the smoke. It must have been like a few days after, maybe even a week after. You were still able to see the smoke sort of persisting. So I do remember looking over into New York and seeing that, and it was pretty bizarre. That was a pretty vivid memory. I don't know where we went, and I don't know how many days after that actually was, but that was probably the most specific thing that I can remember. And that kind of just makes it more real because you can understand how much damage this actually did. Just to the area, to all the families, to the people involved. This was a crazy, crazy thing. And again, as a young kid, you can't really wrap your mind around such a brutal terrorist attack. If it happened today, again, like adults sort of take things differently, but kids are just like, there's like an eerie silence to kids when they understand that something really bad happened, but they can't really understand what was going on. So I just remember looking at that smoke and sort of trying to process it, but I couldn't really. But of course, I do remember that very specifically, and I remember that for a long time growing up. Now, as far as I can remember, must be up until 2004 even is the earliest that I can remember of me actually wanting to join the military. I don't know if that really helped shape me wanting to join the military. Of course, that's something that I really thought about. And, again, it really resonated with me since we had a close connection with it, with my aunt and whatnot. So it was something that's really stuck with me. And I think it was a big motivator for why I ended up joining. I mean, it was kind of, again, as early as I can remember, I wanted to join the Marine Corps specifically. And I'm not exactly sure where that originally sparked from. Maybe it was also like a family friend that sort of helped us because he was a Navy veteran. And I just thought he was extremely badass. So it was kind of a combination of that and also the attacks on 9/11 that really forced me into joining the military because I was dead set on joining the military and more specifically the Marine Corps. And that's what I ended up doing. In 2012, I joined the Marine Corps. I served in the infantry, did that for a little bit, and then ended up joining the Army infantry. And then I ended up doing that for a few years before switching my job. So yeah, of course, it was a big motivator for me wanting to join the military, and even today, it's a big motivation for me wanting to stay in the military because, again, you sort of see all these attacks and whatnots in all these different areas, and I just sort of relate that to what the Americans felt on September 11th and sort of the days after, what my mom felt, and the confusion that I felt sort of watching all this. Because I just think of all these other kids in all these other countries that are watching these, attacks firsthand, and they don't know how to process it. So now that I'm older, I know how to process it. I know I have a general understanding of why people do these things. And again, it's a big motivation for me wanting to stay in. So we can make sure that doesn't happen to as many people. So all these families and all these people aren't as affected. And so you don't have all these kids sort of having that confusion that stays in their head about what just happened and why all these people are, why all these people are gone. But I do want to check out this video. Again, it is 4 minutes long, but I watched this video and sort of like the videos of what happened after 9/11 as far as people sort of coming together, all these communities coming together, everyone helping, all the first responders and everything. That was, I don't know, like when I think of American history, that in my life is the time that Americans were the closest, because they sort of shared all this trauma with each other and everybody could feel it. People from all over the globe could sort of feel it. And yeah, it's a weird time because it was brutal and what happened is an absolute tragedy. But what sort of arose from that is a really sort of beautiful thing. Now, we'll say if y'all haven't seen this, it's pretty brutal, pretty emotional. It'll incite all that raw emotion in you, just because, again, it's using all the raw footage, all the raw audio. It's not trying to sugarcoat it or make it seem any more dramatic than it is, because it's showing exactly what happened. And I think that's the best way of sort of showcasing these kind of tragedies.
American 11, are you trying to call?
The cockpit is not answering their phone. Our number 1 has been staffed and our 5 has been staffed.
Hey, I'm going to call from Washington. I am in a situation with American 11, a possible hijack.
What's going on, Betty? The aircraft is erratic again. Problem, very erratic. Betty, talk to me. Betty, are you there? Betty? Betty?
A plane just right there.
What?
The 737.
What?
Like the World Trade
Who are you
Center.
talking to?
Oh, God. Oh, my God.
United 175.
Again, the raw audio clips really do it in for me. I went to the 9/11 Memorial Museum and they had these clips showing, and they also have like diagrams of sort of how it all went down as far as like a play-by-play. And that's definitely the most emotional I've been for this specific event, because you're walking through, you see all the different artifacts that were recovered from the rubble. At the same time, it talks about the owners, what meetings they had that day, what floor they worked on, and it just makes it really personal. It pays a really good tribute to the victims. So if you guys have the chance to go to that museum in New York, I definitely recommend it, because it's a fantastic museum and it pays awesome tribute to it. It even has like a wall of all the victims and whatnot. So it's a great museum to check out. So highly recommend that.
New York. We have some problems over here right now. We might have a hijack over here, 2 of them. Jules, this is Ryan. Listen, on an airplane that's been hijacked, and things don't go well, and it's not looking good. I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good. So have a good time. Same to my parents and everybody. And I just totally love you, and I'll see you later. Bye, babe.
Those are honestly the worst.
What are those people gonna do? All the elevators are blocked out.
Oh my God. So both towers are now.
Okay, now I got an aircraft 6 miles east of the White House.
Crystal City, just north of Crystal City.
Just to the north of your town.
Yeah, stop all departures.
Pentagon just got hit. Don't for CNN. God damn, I can't even protect my NCA.
So this was also extremely brutal. This is probably the toughest thing to hear, is the plane that actually crashed in the field, which I think they're going to be going over here shortly. But that one is the most brutal to hear from my perspective, because it has the audio. You can actually go to the museum and hear the audio of what they're saying when they're going to try and attack the cockpit and whatnot. And it shows what the plane's movements were doing. And it just must have been so terrifying, because this plane, I think, ended up flipping upside down and, diving into the ground like that. So you have these people, it's their last moments. They're trying to take over the cockpit and do whatever they can. And then the plane flips and slams into the ground. It's just, again, impossible to sort of imagine from my perspective. I mean, I don't like flying in general, but sort of thinking about that is a whole nother level of terror. And you had these people just being extremely courageous doing what they're doing. And again, just hearing the audio really makes it hit home a little bit more.
United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Negative contact, we're looking, United 93.
United 93, Cleveland, if you hear the center ident.
I got that piece of dog. Keep remaining to be. You have the ball, boys.
Tuesday, 9:47 a.m.
Hi, baby. Baby, you have to listen to me carefully. I'm on a plane that's been hijacked. I'm on the plane. I'm calling from the plane. I want to tell you I love you. Please tell my children that I love them very much. And I'm so sorry, babe. I hope to be able to see your face again, baby. I love you. Bye.
Number 56865. We have, I believe it is a Boeing 757. Can you see him up there, sir?
That's confirmed. It looks like he's rocking his wings.
Roger.
He's rocking back and forth.
Number 56865, I advise you stay away from that aircraft. Go north as fast as you can.
United 93, have you got information on that yet?
Yeah, he's down.
He's down?
Yes.
When did he land?
He did not land.
Oh, he's down?
Yes,
Down?
somewhere up northeast of Camp David.
Sean, it's me. I just want to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. There's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
At number 2 World Trade Center, right. Lady was shooting in the office. We're not ready to die, but it's getting bad.
Again, hearing like the actual voice messages is probably the most real thing for me. But I don't know, it's again, it is really hard to watch. Again, this is, Americans losing their lives in, arguably one of our worst tragedies in our history. But when you see the pictures of people jumping out of the towers, it's extremely hard to imagine that sort of level of desperation. Like the smoke is so bad, the heat is so bad, and you're trapped on a certain floor, so people just end up jumping, and it's I don't know. It's hard to think about. It's hard to sort of wrap your mind around these people's last moments where they're making that conscious decision to jump out. And, obviously they weren't going to survive, but what was happening inside that building must have been a worse hell than what they had just decided to do.
I'm on the 83rd floor. I'm gonna die, aren't I? No. I'm gonna die.
Ma'am, say your prayers.
God.
We're going to think positive because you got to help each other get off the floor.
I'm
Now,
gonna die.
A new type of war. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I really love the quote that they put right here, because that's sort of what I think about when I think about my service and joining, and the whole global war on terror is you have all these people signing up because they want to be that sort of line of defense, so all this evil crap isn't coming to the United States and hurting innocent people. And likewise with people that are inside of those specific countries, they want to sort of be that line of defense from the bad guys that are trying to do all this harm. So I do like that quote specifically. Now with that, this actually reminded me of another thing, is the days following the attacks, all you heard outside was constant sirens. And those first responders, man, those men and women were freaking absolute legends, because you had people coming from New Jersey, you had people coming from all these different locations, even like different states, going over to help because of course all the first responders in New York weren't enough. So you had all these different departments from New Jersey going over and trying to help out. And you could just, I remember that very vividly, all those different sirens just constantly for, I don't know, it seemed like a week after. So I do remember that pretty specifically. And again, those first responders are something else. So again, it really brings out the best. It brought out the best in Americans as far as people putting themselves in harm's way to try and help each other out, trying to search through the rubble, trying to find survivors, and cleaning up this mess. And then of course the response after that, us going into the global war on terror, was a direct result of this. And that's been a 20-year thing. So again, you have people growing up in the global war on terror, and they've been living their entire life under that sort of shadow. And people who grew up after 9/11 might not understand specifically what it means to people who sort of saw those events unfolding. But I think it's pretty incredible that you have people that sort of learn about what happened, and they're joining up as a result of that, even if they weren't actually living. So when people are saying, like, you have privates now that have no idea what the attacks on September 11th were, like, I think it's a little bit insulting, especially since you have all these Americans that are, even 2 weeks ago going overseas to help with the evacuation of Afghanistan, and people literally losing their lives, people losing their lives that were born after 9/11. And I think it's just not doing them justice saying that they joined for different reasons and that they don't really understand what it means to join as a result of that. So you have people that are going to do their part to try and prevent this stuff from happening further. And I think we should absolutely respect that because they're sort of jumping in on the tail end to try and finish up the global war on terror. And, they deserve that sort of respect. But again, if y'all have the opportunity to go to the 9/11 Memorial Museum, I absolutely recommend it. It was melancholy, but it was also fascinating, and it was extremely motivating to go to and see everything. Again, it was a little bit more personal for me, and it was even more personal and real because when I was visiting it, it was during like a little Fleet Week event when I was in the Marine Corps. So we were all in our uniforms walking around New York City, and we're sort of experiencing that way. So I was sort of looking at what caused me to be wearing the uniform that I was wearing, which is kind of odd to think about. And it even reminded me of after the actual attacks, there was like some memorial lights, like these big blue beams of light that were put up. And I remember checking that out, and I don't know, it was hard for me to sort of appreciate it back then, but I'm glad I was able to see it and sort of see that sort of memorial. But again, the museum did a pretty fantastic job of doing it as well. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. Or even if y'all can check out the One World Trade Center, I would highly recommend it just because the symbology is just incredible as far as taking that event and then building something off of it like that. Even some of our warships, like the USS New York, some of the steel used in the bow of the ship was from the wreckage of the World Trade Center, which, again, that symbology is just incredible. It's very American, I think. But that's pretty much my experience with what happened on September 11th. Now, I want to try and get someone else's perspective, maybe like my family's perspective on what they remember about that day. But if y'all have anything you want to share about the attacks as far as your perspective, mainly as like an American, but also what the perspective was from someone abroad, what you remember about it, what the news was saying about it, what the locals were saying about it, I'd love to hear that down in the comments section because I haven't seen that perspective so much. I've only really seen it from the American perspective. So I would really appreciate it if y'all were to share that down below. Sort of maybe talk about your experiences with the follow-on global war on terror and everything. But yeah, please put it down in the comment section. I think we'd all appreciate it. If you guys want to go into the Discord and share that as well, we can do that. But yeah, thank you guys for continuing to watch and support the channel. And thank you for allowing me to sort of share my experiences and also try and hear some of your experiences as a result. But hopefully y'all were able to appreciate the video. But that is it for this one. So I will see y'all in the next one.